Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Happy Tuesday. It is the Guerilla Sports Daily. You got me, Brandon Krisztal, taking you through everything or almost everything that's going on this Tuesday. And we might as well start with what everyone watched most recently. You had not one, but two Monday Night Football games. And it's funny because I don't think of myself as old, but plenty of people around here do. Certainly our pal Liv Moods does. She calls Nate Jackson and I old every day. But I'm 46 years old. And last night you had the two Monday Night Football games. Ravens and Bucks gave us a good game on ESPN, and you could obviously watch the Manning cast on ESPN2. I thought they did a fun thing on the Manning cast where they had Scott Hansen from Red Zone give them a heads up on what was going on in the Arizona and Chargers game, which started about an hour and 15 minutes later, give or take. And if you wanted to watch that game in its entirety or the Manning cast after the early game ended, it had to be on ESPN Plus. Okay. Well, I have ESPN Plus. Most people that work in our industry do because there's so many games that are streamed on there, and then they're one of the better paid services for some of the content they have, especially when you get into the NBA and especially the NFL draft and college football coverage, as well as a lot of their soccer stuff. So having ESPN Plus to me is just it's been habitual for probably a decade or since ever it's been a service. And if you have kids like I do, the Disney bundle that gives you that plus Hulu, all three of them, it was $10. I think that price has gone up a little bit, but if you got in on the ground floor, I think it still locked you in there. So when I hear people complaining that are around my age or a little older, they can't find the game on ESPN Plus, I think that argument has to go by the wayside. If you want to say that every game should be on over-the-air television, fine. But we know that's not the case because Monday Night Football for a long, long time, and Sunday Night Football before that was on ESPN, which was part of a cable package. Usually when you watch your favorite teams in every sport that isn't football, those games have often been part of a cable package. We're not going to get all of that with what has happened at altitude over the last couple of years, but anyone that has Comcast knows that pain. I happen to have DirecTV, so I've been able to watch every Nuggets and Avs game over the last 4 or 5 years that they haven't been on Comcast. But not being able to find ESPN Plus is on you. And that's sort of the point. I wasn't going to start there, but hearing people complain about it, it was just funny to me. If a team, if your favorite team or a game you want to watch is only on Peacock or only on Amazon, like Thursday Night Football is, again, that is on you. Just like you had to pay for cable, this is a new world, okay? We used to smoke on airplanes. We used to not wear seatbelts in cars. Things change. The technology changes. As we know, so many people get all of their information, all of their news, and even all of their entertainment right here on their cell phone. And so if you can't figure it out on your big fancy TV or however you get it, unless you're so old and or so technically challenged and or can't afford it, which is a bummer, but that's a different conversation as well. It is on you to not be able to watch those games. But if you watch both, you got a really entertaining one in the early one with the Bucks hosting the Ravens. Bucks come out firing. You get Mike Evans on the touchdown early, and the Bucks take that 10-0 lead. Mike Evans would go down with a hamstring on a missed touchdown later, but he becomes just another player to have 100 touchdowns, and the fifth player to have 100 touchdowns. I shouldn't say just another, one of a handful, have 100 touchdowns in his first 11 years. The other four guys that did that are all in the Hall of Fame, and Mike Evans will be there. How long does his leg keep him out? We'll see. As that game progressed, though, the Ravens imposed their will. You saw why Derrick Henry is so valuable to what they're doing now and why Lamar Jackson won an MVP again last year. He's going to go for 4,000 passing yards to go with likely 1,000 rushing yards, but he completes 5 touchdown passes. He will be the AFC Player of the Week because they win that game 41-31. Derrick Henry, an 80-yard run. He had another big run in the fourth quarter as well. I want to say it was 39 yards, where if he just tiptoes a little more, he's probably looking at a 200-yard day and a second rushing, or I guess that would have been his first touchdown of the day because he got the pass right after. But a touchdown, a big day, 169 yards and 5 touchdowns for Lamar Jackson, 169 on the ground for Henry and that touchdown catch. And the Ravens, after starting 0-2, are rolling right now. The Broncos are going to see him in a couple weeks. In fact, week after next. in Baltimore. The Ravens play the Browns this week, and we know the Browns are obviously going through the transition from Deshaun Watson to either DTR or Jameis Winston. They signed Bailey Zappi to their practice squad. So the Ravens will very likely be 6-2 when the Broncos, who should be 5-3, take them on next week. And then the very end of that game, you had a bummer of an injury. They're down 10, but the Bucs are trying to score, trying to get another onside kick. We saw, I can't say it was the first, but the first one I had seen, the first onside kick recovered. And so I think that's what they were trying to do, is get either in field goal range or a lucky touchdown, get one more onside kick, and truly have a Hail Mary situation or a last-minute field goal. But Chris Godwin with a gruesome, what appeared to be a broken ankle injury. I haven't seen the final diagnosis, and there's no question that even if it was dislocated, it has to feel like Chris Godwin's season is very much in jeopardy, if not completely done. And so that was kind of a bummer way to end what was a really fun game. You get 72 points. That's going to go way over the over. Defensive coaches don't love it. Todd Bowles is a defensive coach. The Ravens have had a good defense for a long time. And I get that some of those were late garbage points and yards, but still 31 points that you gave up. And so when we go from that game to end it the way it did with Godwin, it was just a disappointing way to end a fun first game. And then you transitioned over to catch. If you had ESPN Plus and could figure it out, I watched the Manning cast on ESPN Plus. Then you saw the Chargers, not very impressive, a really good win for Arizona. I thought this was the worst team in football going in. They are Carolina, and they've got 3 wins now, including one really good one. And maybe it's less impressive with where San Francisco is right now, but I thought Arizona would be like a 2-win team, and they're sitting there at 3-4 with a last-second field goal. The Chargers D, which we know has been really good, allows Arizona to get down the field, and Kyler Murray made just enough plays in the passing game. He had a touchdown run as well, and shows you that elite speed that he has is still very much there, despite having leg injuries in recent years and not being available completely. So I don't think the Arizona Cardinals will affect the outcome of that division in terms of being in a battle at the top. I still feel like Seattle, clearly, what they did in Atlanta, will be there. I think San Fran, if they can get on track, and we'll get to the Niners here in just a second. And then obviously the Rams are in that mix as well. It just feels like the Cardinals are still too far behind, and I don't love their roster. They're old in spots. You like Marvin Harrison Jr., you like James Conner, you like Kyler Murray, and CSU's own Trey McBride. But nonetheless, good for the Broncos, because that win now propels the Broncos by a half game ahead of the Chargers, who've already had their bye week. So the Broncos at 4-3, if we look at the standings before we look at some of the other news and notes around the league, with that win, the Broncos are back in the playoffs. They were in the playoffs after they won on Thursday, out of the playoffs after the Colts and Steelers won, and the Chargers were ahead of them percentage-wise. Then with the Bengals losing and now the Chargers losing, at 4-3, the Broncos, if the playoffs started today, and I know everyone hates doing this, although it's still fun to say, the Broncos would be the 7th seed. Yes, there's a lot of football left. They've only played 7 games, in some cases 6. But if the playoffs started today, the Broncos would be the 7th seed. They would travel to Houston and take on the 2 seed. We know the Chiefs at 6-0, the only undefeated team in football, would be the 1 seed. So as of today, the Broncos are in the playoffs. They will remain there if and when they beat Carolina on Sunday. Sean Payton talked yesterday about being a big favorite. He said, we just have to focus week to week and not overlook anyone. We talk about trap game, and they're 7.5-point favorites at last check. So they should still remain in the playoff picture. Then back-to-back trips at Baltimore, at Kansas City. We're going to have an interesting 3 weeks here in Broncos country. But looking around the league, I touched on the Niners, and some news came down. We saw where Deebo Samuel is dealing with pneumonia and was actually hospitalized. Our pal Liv Moods, who does, of course, so much here with us at Guerilla with off-field and off-court, she also has a Bleacher Report show with Deebo that was canceled last minute. She flies out to the Bay Area and does Deebo's show every week. And with him hospitalized, he obviously was unavailable not only to finish the game Sunday. Pneumonia is pretty serious, so they want him to get all the fluids, get healthy. So no show there. But adding injury to insult, you already lose Deebo. We saw Brandon Ayuk go down on Sunday. Kyle Shanahan talked about that, and you see why players hold out for more money. And as frustrated as Ayuk made that situation seem, or as Niners fans may have been with him, or Niners management, and they've got a deal worked out with the Steelers. He says, I'm not going there. They got a deal worked out with the Patriots. He says, I'm not going there. He ultimately gets his money from San Francisco. This is why players in a league where contracts are almost never guaranteed, except Kirk Cousins and Deshaun Watson's, this is why players hold out. This is why they push for the most money possible. And it's easy for us to say, oh, you're franchised. You're going to get 16 million this year, 18 million this year, 20 million this year, even 28, 30 million, what the top receivers get. But for 1 year, we know Brandon Ayuk's year is now done. And there's a good chance next year he gets off to a slow start, depending on how he handles his rehab, how his body responds, and if he's really ready to hit the ground running in the season opener, which is always, a couple days after Labor Day. So you're talking about what, 11-ish months, 11 and a half months between when he hurt his injury or had his injury and hurt himself and when they'll start the season. That's why players in the NFL scratch and claw and fight and do all they can to get as much guaranteed money as possible because of situations like this. Tim Patrick, another good example. Tim Patrick has 2 really good years for the Broncos. He gets hurt in training camp, misses an entire year, gets hurt the next year in training camp, misses an entire year. But because he had signed that 3-year, $30 million deal prior to the first injury where he hurt his Achilles in training camp, he had some financial security. So when people want to get mad at players, this is the reason why in the NFL, especially, players hold out or hold in and do all they can to get their guaranteed money because you have these devastating season-ending injuries. So kind of a bummer way to end the weekend, which saw some really fun games. Fun game between the Lions and Vikings. And obviously it started with a fun Broncos win, even if they were playing a JV Saints team. But you get overall just what was some fun games. Even the Chiefs-Niners wasn't the prettiest game, but you saw 2 really good teams. You thought maybe the Niners, if they weren't as undermanned and had Christian McCaffrey, but even still that Kyle Shanahan was going to make this, not his Super Bowl, but just a game that mattered more to them because they've had those tough losses to the Niners, or to the Chiefs rather, in a couple of Super Bowls. I mentioned the standings, though. I guess might as well do it top to bottom so that we know where the Broncos stand. Is, again, they would be the 7 seed if the playoffs started today. Chiefs, your number 1 seed. Then Texans, Ravens win that division in the AFC North. Buffalo and Pittsburgh also 5-2. The Colts, who the Broncos are going to play as well. The Colts at 4-3 are ahead of the Broncos as the 6th seed. We'll jump to the NFC, and then I'm going to circle back to the AFC. In the NFC, Detroit at 5-1 with the tiebreaker over the Vikings for now. We know those teams will play again later in the year in Detroit. The Lions are the 1 seed, so they get a bye. The Washington Commanders, the upstart Commanders at 5-2, and we'll see how that rib injury affects Jaden Daniels. They would be the 2 seed, and they would host the 7-seeded Chicago Bears. So the 2 rookie quarterbacks, which I believe they square off this weekend. We may not see Jaden Daniels if he can't go, but the number 1 pick in Caleb Williams, the number 2 pick in Jaden Daniels would play each other in the first round of the playoffs. Seattle would win the West, and then Atlanta at 4-3 would still win the AFC or NFC South. We'll see if Tampa can rally the loss of Evans. We'll see how long that is. Going to keep him on the shelf, and Godwin very likely for the year. Rashad White's been really banged up, although he played pretty well last night for a guy that's banged up and almost missed the game. Vita Vea has been banged up. Antoine Winfield. The Saints we know have fallen off the map, and the Panthers we can't even really get into. The Eagles are right on the outside looking in, as is Tampa. I guess I should mention that the Chargers and the Bengals are right there. And then you drop off to teams like Miami. And I guess with Miami, and I didn't have this on the rundown, but we should weigh in on the Tua Tagovailoa thing because we're looking at injuries around the league. It looks like Tua is going to play this week. He met the media yesterday. He's not going to wear the Guardian cap, which is that extra layer of protection that players wear in practice all year long and in training camp. At least in training camp. I need to double check now that I think about it when they come off the field if they're wearing them in practice now. We saw where the right tackle, Gedeke, for the Bucs wears it. If you're watching the Manning cast, Ed Reed was making fun of Peyton Manning and said, hey, Peyton, is he wearing your helmet? But Tua, who it feels like the Guardian cap was invented for, is not going to wear it. But there was never any doubt in my mind that Tua Tagovailoa would be back and very likely back this season. You have to be cleared medically from a concussion. And the one thing we know about concussions is they last for however long they last. And sometimes that can be much longer than you might expect, because a guy is showing signs that things are going okay, and then it takes a turn for the worse. It might be bad from the jump. I remember Eric Johnson here on the Avs missed almost an entire year. I think he missed 10 months with a concussion and concussion symptoms that wouldn't go away. But then I also think about Wes Welker, who had concussions in his career before he got to Denver, and then he had 2 within a month, and then had to sit out a month. But I remember talking to him in December. I said, "How do you feel? Not your head, but how do you feel?" He said his body had never felt that good because he had never missed that chunk of the season that late in the year. So his body had recovered. But because we don't know how to measure the long-term effects of concussions, we can get into all the CTE studies, and it's obvious that repeated head trauma, whether it be through sports or otherwise, is never good. They have these check marks, and neurologists, independent neurologists, not the team doctors, that are at the top of their profession across the world of neurology in every major city. Obviously, wherever there's an NFL team, those people are independent, and it's their job to look out for the players' health and safety first, even if they're a fan of that team, whatever it may be. Their job is to make sure that the player is medically cleared. And because concussions, they have their check marks. Once you pass each check mark and you're not bothered by light, and there aren't other sensitivities, and you don't have a ringing and all the, and I'm obviously just kind of dumbing it down, you're going to be cleared. Okay. So then it becomes a question of, is Tua going to play because he wants to play? If the Dolphins hold him out, they still have to pay him. That's their decision. But he signed a contract and has $160 million in guaranteed money coming his way. He's not just going to walk away from football on his own and say, "Hey, I'd love to keep playing," but it's what he could. I guess we saw Chris Borland do that 2 years into his NFL career. Linebacker out of Wisconsin, was playing for the Niners. But most players are going to say, "I love this game." Tua knows that this game's provided so much for him, and not that it won't still provide other opportunities, but he wants to go out and play and win. And you can see what a drop-off it is when you have, whether it be Snoop Huntley or Skylar Thompson, with that track team that they've assembled in Miami with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane, et cetera, and Mike McDaniel's offense, which, by the way, I saw this note, they've scored 70 points through 7 games. They scored 70 points against the Broncos in 1 game last year, as we all remember that massacre in week 3. But there was never any doubt that Tua was going to come back, and they're going to do all they can. He's putting, as I've heard people say, extra stress on the O-line. O-line's already wired to be nervous anyway. It's funny when you talk to an O-lineman versus a D-lineman. O-lineman can have a great game. They give up a sack, and their Sunday is ruined, especially if it's an impactful sack it's part of a turnover or to get off the field in a critical situation. A defensive player can have a very average or below average game, but if they get a sack or a sack or two or scoop a fumble up, they've had a huge day. But Tua coming back is going to put extra, I think, just nervousness on everyone around him. And I can't remember, maybe it was Wes Welker, but I can't remember a time when not everyone in the league exclusively, but players around the league, I think coaches at least have thoughts on it. They may not share it publicly, but fans of all 32 teams, Broncos fans, Chargers fans, Vikings fans, football fans, really think Tua should walk away. But at the same time, I think all of us would be, if we were facing that decision of walk away from $160 million guaranteed to do the thing I love the most, and or save my brain health. I guess the other argument too is he's already sustained so many concussions. It's not getting worse. It's going to be bad, whatever it is. I don't know if that's truly the case, but he's coming back. He's going to play this week. He's not going to wear the Guardian cap. So I think everyone will sit there and, will have their fingers crossed and hope he makes it through the season healthy. I think people would like to see the Dolphins get back in the playoff mix, especially fantasy football fans that have Tyreek Hill or any of those other Dolphin skill players that want to get into the mix of their fantasy leagues or have those guys contribute, but certainly for Dolphins fans. All right, let's shift gears here to the NBA and the news that came down yesterday. Shams Charania from now ESPN, one of the best insiders in the biz, and takes now the top spot with Adrian Wojnarowski going to work at his alma mater at St. Bonaventure. ESPN swoops in, they hire Shams. Shams ends up breaking the news, not the biggest surprise, but breaking the news that Aaron Gordon signs this new $100 $33 million extension, which I believe kicks in this year. And it's going to be a 4-year deal with a 5th-year option. It's a player option for $37 million. I don't know where Aaron Gordon's, I don't say skill, where his level will be in 5 years, but going into the 28-29 season, just as much as I knew that we were going to see Tua Tagovailoa play this week and play this year and come back to football, Aaron Gordon is going to exercise that player option for almost $40 million because there's not going to be another multi-year deal that's going to pay him close to that on the table. I think at that point, he'll be into his 30s. He obviously has been paid well as the 4th pick in the draft by Orlando, but so he's come in and fit perfectly here. He's a do-everything guy. He's a Swiss Army knife. At Media Day, which was a little less than a month ago, as Aaron sat down, the very first question that was asked to him by Bennett Durando of the Denver Post was about getting this extension done. And here was Aaron's answer about the status of where things stood with the negotiations and his hope to get a long-term deal done to stay in Denver.
I really love this organization. I love the players on this team. Love the coaching staff. So I hope we get it done. Seems like it's moving forward in the right direction. So I'm excited. I'm excited, hopefully, to be extended and stay with this organization.
He said all the right things there, and the team rewards him. What's funny, though, about the NBA, I assume Aaron Gordon will be made available today. We're obviously going to have to talk to him by Thursday. But these deals get reported, and then it just takes a while to get done. And so unlike, say, NFL free agency, or even when they start NBA free agency, and then a week later you find – I feel like deals get done, and we don't get an email about it being officially done for like a week. I assume because it's been agreed to and it's not being reported as being signed, when Michael Malone talks today, either before or after, we will also see Aaron Gordon. They may even move the media into their press conference room as opposed to on the court like they did it yesterday with the Avalanche on the road. We will almost certainly hear from Aaron Gordon today. If not, we'll definitely hear from him by Thursday if we don't get him tomorrow either. But you got to think that this deal's been in the works, so maybe it'll be signed and we'll get an email sooner than later. Aaron Gordon's meant so much to the city, and what was great about seeing him sign this new deal or agree to this new deal was it brought up the memories of him running through the streets after the championship with his shirt off. And I should have tipped Jay off to have that because I think he carried the trophy around and was in his practice shorts, not the shorts he wore in the game, I don't think, although I guess I need to go back and look when they won the championship, but just paraded through the city all night long with Nuggets fans, the first championship appearance and title in franchise history. And he is truly a man of the people. But it also, we were reminded of this exchange. This was after they had started 0-2 and then climbed back into the series against Minnesota. We know how it ultimately ended. But I remember sitting there in the press conference in a small room in Minnesota when he ended his press conference as Joker's walking in, and you'll see him in this clip here. But he had this exchange with Katie Wingy of Altitude on why he's so selfless.
I'm curious where you learn to be selfless, because a lot of times in this league, that's a hard thing to do when you're on a team like this. Where did you learn to be selfless?
That's a great transition, Katie. You saw big fella step in the room, huh? That guy, man, that's where I learned to be selfless. I learned it from him, man. He's the best basketball player in the world. 3-time MVP, and he's the most selfless, humble dude that you'll ever meet. So if a 3-time MVP can do it, I can do it too.
Again, saying all the right things. Aaron Gordon, when he got traded here, it was such a bummer because the Nuggets make that trade. They played, I think, 8 games, 10 games, whatever it was. It may have even been less. Jamal Murray goes down against Golden State late in April or whatever that was in April, and the season already feels lost. Then MPJ's hurt. He is struggling through the playoffs. Had that loss, I want to say it was to Portland in the second round. But you thought at first, Aaron Gordon with Jamal, with MPJ, and obviously with Joker is the perfect fit. At the number 4 overall pick, he never really lived up to what Orlando expected him to be. When you take a guy in the top 5, you expect them to come in and dominate and be 20-10. And at his size, you'd want to see that every night and do what guys like LeBron do or your frontline guys. And he hasn't been that, but he's a perfect teammate on a good team, a perfect fit. He had to play center more than he wanted to last year. We'll see how that plays out this year, but well-deserved. And by getting the deal done this year, without getting too into the weeds, as the salary cap changes and they have these aprons or levels that you have to pay guys under and it gets convoluted, they're getting him in basically in a team-friendly manner that's going to help them have a little more flexibility. They obviously signed Jamal Murray to his extension, and we know that Joker, when he signed his new deal, made him the highest paid player in basketball for a time before that was surpassed. But we do have the NBA kicking off tonight, and you've got the ring ceremony in Boston. We're going to see Colorado's own Derek White holding up a ring. We saw him hold up a gold medal. He got his own new $160 million deal. But Derek White, Parker kid, legend high, starts at Colorado Springs. See you Colorado Springs, and then finishes up in Boulder and starts his career with the Spurs. Has carved out a big time role, not only in Boston, but the Olympic team grabbed him instead of Jaylen Brown. That aggravated at least Jaylen Brown and Jaylen Brown fans. But they've got a really good team. They're the favorites to repeat. Nuggets are right there with them. So they're going to take on the Knicks. You'll see, just like we saw last year here at Ball Arena with the ring ceremony and the banner and all of that. You'll see the TNT crew for the last time, as far as we know, unless something changes in the future. The TNT crew kicking off the season, as they always do, in the city where the championship was won, where the team won the championship. I guess it doesn't matter in the city, but for ring night, for the ceremony. So Ernie, Shaq, Charles, Kenny will all be there. It'll be a big celebration against a reworked Knicks team. We'll see how they are with Karl Anthony Towns. So that'll be a fun game. And then in the second game, we could see history. I guess I didn't even realize this. And I had a fantasy basketball draft last night. I do not think this affected my picks, but it looks like Bronny James is starting the year on the roster. And so because of that, with the Lakers hosting Minnesota, we're going to see something that we've only seen once in major team sports in America. And LeBron and Bronny very easily, and I don't think it'll happen a lot, the flow of the game will have something to do with it, because there's no reason, I would think, to play Bronny James in critical minutes. Maybe you get him in for a minute at the end of the half or at the end of the game, but there's no chance LeBron's on the court at the end of the game if the game's in hand one way or the other, or in transition when the game is clearly, it's a 20-point game with 4 minutes left. Maybe Bronny comes in to finish off the game and LeBron plays for a minute. He's not going to start the game. I wouldn't think. That would seem almost impossible to me, because the Lakers do have some nice pieces. They're relatively healthy now. And obviously LeBron and AD are the, two-headed tip of the spear, if you will, or a two-headed snake that are leading the way there for the Lakers. But we will see not only LeBron and Bronny on the court, at least in uniform and in warms together, and we'll see if they play. But just like we saw in, I guess it was 89 was when the rookie, that was when Ken Griffey's rookie card came out. So I don't remember if it was 89 or 90. When Ken Griffey Sr. and Ken Griffey Jr. took the field together in Seattle and made history there. It was obviously an awesome moment. Ken Griffey, I think a year out of high school, is playing with his dad. You don't have to have a son or even a kiddo to understand how cool it is to do something like this with parents, with kids. But to add to it, the Griffeys are going to be in attendance. Ken Griffey Jr. has been interviewed and said, I'm bringing my dad because it's such a special moment. It'll be cool. And so, look, the Lakers and new coach JJ Redick aren't going to cut off their nose to spite their face. We all like feel-good stories. They want to win a game, but we also understand this is the NBA. There's a reason Bronny's on the starting roster and the opening day 15. And again, I guess I haven't gone through who all is healthy for the Lakers. I think we will see Bronny play many more games in the G League than we will see him play in the NBA, certainly this season and maybe forever. In fact, his younger brother, LeBron's middle child, the son, Bryce, is a little bigger, and some people like his upside more. But Bronny's about 6'3", Bryce is about 6'5". Obviously, LeBron is 6'8.5", and one of the most impressive physical specimens that's ever walked the earth in terms of athletic prowess. And that's why in year 22 now, he's still playing as well as he is and will again this year and did last year, to be an all-NBA kind of player. And so it'll be fun to see, I think, from a nostalgia standpoint. And then nobody in Denver likes the Timberwolves necessarily, but we know that they hate the Lakers. So I think you'll ultimately be cheering for a Timberwolves win just because you want to see the Lakers lose. And then the final thing I have today, you got the Avs looking for 3 in a row. They're at the Kraken. It's kind of an earlier start. If you're in Seattle, you're probably annoyed. 5:30 puck drop there at Climate Pledge Arena our own Jesse Montano is in Seattle to cover that game, like we do covering all the Avs and all the Nuggets games. But they seem to have found their footing. We know they're undermanned. They're going to be undermanned this whole kind of first month as they're just working to get guys back. But you're seeing other guys step up. Ross Colton clearly fitting in comfortably with Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen on the front line. And I've talked to Jesse about this. I hope this will pick up. I'm talking to you, Avs fans. I think, and I'm pretty sure Justus Ananen's nickname is Juice, but I think he should be called the judge for dispensing justice, because Justus still kind of looks like Justice. I guess I could ask Jay to chime in, as he's actually from Europe and can get into some of those pronunciations. But Justus and Justice are similar when you dumb it down and make it Americanized. So, as Jay's behind the glass, and you obviously see Jay hosting the Daily Sum, where do you come down on the judge? Because he's dispensing justice by keeping the pucks out of the net. I guess we don't know for sure, and if they announced it, I apologize if I missed it. But I think the judge could stick as a cool nickname for Justus Annunen. He could have the scales of justice like on his helmet. So we'll see. Can the Avs win 3 in a row? I believe the last time they started 2-4 was just a couple years ago, and they finished that by hoisting Lord Stanley's Cup. I have a very mini version over there, but I did not bring it for a prop today. Should I run over and grab it, Jay, just to kind of cap it off? So give me 4 seconds. 4, 3, 2. Look, I made it in 4 seconds, maybe 5. Could we have another Avalanche Cup after starting 2-4? They could be hoisting the cup if history repeats itself. They do need to get healthier. But if the judge is between the pipes dispensing justice, or if Georgie can get it figured out, they get healthier, they get some help. And who knows, maybe even the captain, Gabe Landeskog, can find his way back onto the ice. Lonzo Ball, going to be playing for the Bulls. Same surgery, same surgeon, following that same pattern. So we'll cross our fingers that they get the captain back, because that would be such a big boost, and that these new pieces mix with the old pieces and the young guys continue to take a step up. And Nathan McKinnon continues to be the most valuable player in the league and the best hockey player in the world, with Cale Makar right there, 1A, 1B, Mikko playing great. And so it'll be fun to see if they can win a 3rd in a row and continue to just, find their way here early in the season. That's going to do it for me here, though, and us on the Daily. I appreciate you hanging out with me. I'm Brandon Krisztal. Follow me on Twitter. I like to call it Twitter. Sorry. At BK Denver Sports, or on all social media platforms. And we will catch you next time. We got I'm sure, another busy day here on Guerilla Sports. And then I know I'll be here again tomorrow for Off Field at 11 o'clock with Liv and Nate in studio. So thanks for watching, and we will see you soon.